Hey guys, you're listening to Life Lessons from the Screen. My name is Sarah and that is Imogen. This podcast is about the life lessons. We watch films to escape reality, but can we learn something about reality from the films? What lessons can we learn from the characters? And what would we do differently if we were the film characters? Today's film is Whiplash. So, here's a brief synopsis.
So, Whiplash is about this guy called Andrew Neiman, who wants to be the greatest jazz player in the world. He joins this school and is part of this Schaefer Conservatory of Music, I think it's called, and he has this strict teacher called Fletcher, and that's the basis of the film. And you see the relationship and the things they get up to.
It's called Wannabe Film Critic. I say I like films, but I'm not a critic, so we're going to put a timer on the clock to see what we think the film's going to be about. Imogen, do you want to go first?
Oh, do you not want to
Shall
go
we play
first?
rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah. Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper.
What'd you do? Oh.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Oh.
I guess I'm going then. So we're gonna set. So the whole idea is, I've got to tell Imogen in three minutes on my opinion of what I think the film is. So do you want to set a timer?
Okay, so the timer has started.
Okay. So the way I've got my notes here, I think that Andrew Neiman wants validation from Fletcher because he doesn't believe in himself. So, for example, when you see the opening scene and you see Fletcher go into the room that Neiman's playing in, he starts drumming, and I feel like he's looking for validation because he knows Fletcher's the big man, and the validation he gets is toxic because Fletcher uses that to his advantage because he knows Neiman is a college, so he's quite young, and he uses that naivety to be toxic because he knows that Neiman wants the validation, and I feel like he's looking for validation from others instead of himself. You constantly see him alone, and he just thinks that if I'm the greatest, that's where the validation lies. We think he loves drumming, but at the end of it, he sacrifices so much. You think that validation is worth it just to prove to Fletcher that he can become the greatest? And I think as well, he's looking for validation from his father because we find out that his father's he was a writer, but he didn't get anywhere with it. I think he's a college professor, but we see again that his father doesn't value his opinion. He just says that, oh, you can get another job, or oh, there's plenty out there for you, insinuating that he thinks that Neiman can not do it, and everybody around him misunderstood what he wants to do because art in itself gets criticized in that you have this kind of thing that, you know, if you want to be an artist, you have to be a starving artist. And I think Neiman doesn't surround himself with the right people because you see him with no friends. The only person he talks to is his dad and that one girlfriend. Outside that, he has nobody who shares the love for music because you see that everybody in the music place is competitive. You know, you might not have that spot next time, and it's that constant trying to find validation that you're the best. And I feel like,
time's up.
oh, I think that's my point. He wants to find validation, but he does it in the wrong places.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
And it keeps biting him in the butt. So let me get there. Yeah, no. Oh, that's hard. I lost track of
3
it.
minutes.
Yeah, because I was like,
I know,
I was just like,
it's isn't it?
I was just like, yeah, I've got this point, and I was like, oh where did I? And then just lost it at the point. Okay, let me get this timer. Do you want to set it if you've already got it?
Do you want to set it? Because I might not pay attention to it.
Yeah, 3 minutes. Oh. Let's not do 3 hours. You'll be there for ages. All right then, go. Timer's on.
Okay, so first of all, I love this movie. I think it's a great movie, and the ending is perfect. I think the same as Sarah. I think it's Neiman wants validation, and Fletcher's so aggressive and abusive that it's, as you say, it makes this such a toxic relationship. And it's tough because, like, I do kind of think that being strict on someone and, like, telling them, being assertive and giving them, like, guidance is useful, and it can make someone great. But I feel like Fletcher thinks that by, like, bullying someone, he can make a great person by weeding out who's the best. But I don't think it works like that. I think that you need guidance mixed with a bit of passion and love as well. So I feel like Fletcher almost gets lost in this idea of, oh, if I can break them down and they still go, they're the best. But it's like, no, you could have broken down to the point where, you know, you could have had someone great and you've lost them. So I feel like goes too far sometimes. And I also think that it's interesting with Fletcher's character in this film, because this film's all about jazz, and jazz is so based on this idea of, like, it's quite loose and flowing and, like, natural, whereas Fletcher's like the opposite of that. He's so strict and he's so exact with what he wants, and if you're, like, slightly rushing or dragging, like in that one scene, he's so on it, even, like, by, like, a hair. So it's interesting that he's so strict about a genre that's so flexible, and so it's like an interesting parallel to think, you know, what's going on there. And I think the ending of the film with him, with Neiman, he's like doing the drumming to a song that he doesn't know. It kind of combines that, the fact that he's, you know, doing jazz and doing the drums and loving the drums and playing it how he wants to play it, mixed with this, like, organized chaos. And I think that's what jazz is really about. And I think, yeah, it's a tough one because, yeah, Fletcher pushes him so far, and at least all these events that makes Neiman greater. But then, as I say, like, you might be chipping away at something great as well, in the sense that, like, you're chipping something away from him and making him less great because you're putting too much pressure and anxiety on him. Like with the one student that kills himself because of the teacher. That's what they say anyway. So, yeah, that's what I think. I think it's a toxic relationship, yeah.
Done. So let's get to the debrief and dissect what we've got to say. And I agree with you that it's all about the... But the thing is, what I think, the ending leaves it to be ambiguous.
Yeah.
Because
I love that.
You think that, oh, yeah, it's a happy ending, but in hindsight, you've got to realise that it's funny because the movie is Whiplash and he gets into a car accident.
Yeah.
So I thought that was genius. And the second watch, I was just like, oh, Whiplash in like the music piece that they perform, and Whiplash in like the car accident thing. But you've got to realise that what I think people don't realise, he has no friends. His girlfriend, like the fact that what I saw parallels is, you know, in the beginning, when he asked the girl out, it's because he got accepted into the band.
Yeah, he got the confidence.
And then I think something happened, and then he's just like, I've got to focus on music. You won't get it. And you got to realise the girl had no plans, ambitions. Because, you know, when they were like, oh, so why did you choose that college? And she was just like, because that's the only one that let her in. And then he just says, I'm breaking up with you because you won't, what was it like? You won't like that, I don't spend time with you. And she was like, well, you just presume that. And I think what I liked about they never got back together again
Right.
shows that there's consequences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does feel realistic for those characters.
And I feel like he lost it. It was just like, when before he got into that car accident, because he forgot his sheet music,
Yeah.
I felt he wasn't enjoying it anymore. It became toxic.
It's like a toxic, yeah. It's just to get back at Fletcher, isn't it? It's not really for his own passion. It seemed like.
So that,
And then even when he's playing at the end, it's almost as like a FU to Fletcher, saying, "Look how good I am, FU," kind of thing.
and that's what I mean. He discovered that his enjoyment, because he wasn't following pleasing Fletcher. He was just like, oh, I'm not gonna. He was like, in my head, it's just like, hey, you're not gonna make me look like a fool. I'm gonna take that and control it. But I feel like there was a scene where he was just like, when they're in the jazz bar after the thing went down when Fletcher got fired,
Yeah.
and he was like, I don't remember the quote, but it's just like telling somebody they're good is like the worst thing you can do.
Oh yeah, if you say good job.
In this segment, we're going to take the life lessons and see how you can apply Whiplash into reality. So this is the next segment. We're going to call it,
But what would you do?
So going back to what I said earlier about the good job bit, the best teachers I've had, it goes back to the validation. I've always sought validation from teachers, but I knew my self-worth, right?
Yeah.
So there was one teacher, he was just like blunt. He was a bit like Fletcher, but he gave you constructive feedback. And if he said he liked your work, you'll be like, oh my God, you are like a high. But he was never to the point with toxic. He always inspired you, but he always told you what your worth was worth. Because if it could be a complete utter trash, he would say it in a way that give you constructive feedback. So you're always like, next time I'll do better. And I think you've got to be passionate and have your own self-worth. You shouldn't get validation.
Yeah.
With society, it's all about likes and algorithms if you want to pursue a career. But I think if you know you're, for example, like I'm a filmmaker, well, I want to be a filmmaker, but it's just like the stuff that I want to make is stuff that I'm passionate about. So I'm not looking for validation from others because I know what I create means something and it will find someone. It's once you start chasing stuff, then it's a bit difficult.
Yeah, and I think like something like validation, it's always hard not to like having validation because when someone says you did a good job or something's good, like you do get a buzz off of it. And same when someone says something's bad, you're like, oh great, I have to do better. So it's like, yeah, it's hard not to get excited about it. But I think, as you say, if you have enough self-worth and you know for yourself your work is good, then you won't be as affected by it. Because when you start becoming, like Fletcher and 𝘵𝘁𝘁, when you start becoming so affected by it that it influences, how you're living, how you're driving, the rest of it, it's like, it's so unhealthy. Yeah,
And
I agree.
And I think Fletcher was chasing that. They keep referring to the next Charlie Parker, like in the film.
Yeah.
And he was so... I feel like 𝘵𝘁𝘁 wanted to prove people that he could be successful. Fletcher wanted to prove that he'd have it's a prodigy or like someone. So I feel like
True.
there was that scene where they had the redhead drummer from the and the fact that he was just like, he just was like, I never said you were a core member. And then they won that battle, and I think he built 𝘵𝘁𝘁𝘁 so high and then just knocked him down.
Yeah, constantly.
And I feel like Fletcher never found people's talent to nurture. He just wanted to push people to see who will break and who will quit.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
And then, that scene where he was just like, in the beginning, there was like a out of tuned player.
Right.
And he was just like, get out, it's you. And we find out that
it wasn't even him.
And it was just like, but think about it, what's mental damage that were done to someone, that person who left could not probably get that much like anxiety and be like, I'm not going to even play. So instead of finding talent and nurturing it, he was just like, to me, Fletcher was just like, who can I, what's the word, take advantage of? Because it was for him,
he's too brutal.
For him, it was never to nurture talent, it was to find the next Charlie Parker, but he never did it in a way that was good. And I feel like,
yeah, and he uses that anecdote of like, oh, Charlie Parker had something thrown at him, he was nearly decapitated. But that's like one example, you know, the rest of the time, his teacher might, as you say, might have nurtured him, or taught him, or encouraged him. And just because you're strict at one point doesn't mean you have to be strict the whole time you're teaching someone. So, yeah, I agree.
And the thing is, he never learned from that suicide of he made out that
his student,
he never learned words have consequences. So, and that's why I always say that. That's why validation from other people can be messed up, because if you don't believe it and expect other people to believe it, it's just like one. That's why people say like one negative comment will hit at you more than the positive stuff.
Yeah.
So you've kind of got to let your work speak for yourself, which is difficult. And I think not glorify. It's like, you know, people glorify like the abuse that, you know, you need someone to be abusive to make you. But at that point, if somebody's abusing you verbally, it's like you weren't going to take the next steps to do it yourself. It's like the careers that we want to get into, like creative stuff. We know that is constant rejection, you know, it's hard to get a job. But if you're not going to work it yourself, and then you're expecting people to like be like a coach, like Fletcher, then at that point, to me, it's just like you weren't going to take that step yourself. You're just letting someone dictate that. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like...
Yeah. I was going to say like Fletcher, I think he's just too arrogant with it. I was going to say something else, I can't remember. But yeah, he's too arrogant with how he like... He thinks that, as you say, like if you just push someone, that's all it takes. When, as you say, it's like a balance between, you know, being like that, but also being nurturing and supportive. Because like, I feel like people are different in the sense that some people, if you tell them you can't do something, they might be like, okay, I'm going to prove them wrong and tell them I can't, like, oh, that's not the case, I'm going to be better for it. But some people, like, sometimes with me even, if someone says, oh, you're really bad at this, you can't do it, sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I am bad, I'll find something else. So it's about, like, figuring out what the person is motivated by, whether it's criticism or positive comments, like, yeah, because not everyone's the same, and what pushes 𝘵𝘮, you know, would it push some other students?
But that,
so it's tough, yeah.
But then again, you don't realise how much 𝘵𝘮 sacrificed at the end. Like I mentioned, like he had no friends. He sacrificed his girlfriend, and I think the father was trying to say, this is what I realised. 𝘵𝘮 didn't want to be like his father. I think his father gave up being a writer and just lived a normal life. So whenever his father's just saying, oh, this is with me when everybody said, just get a proper job. I'm just like, what do you mean I can't do that? But I think 𝘵𝘮 didn't appreciate what... I think 𝘵𝘮 was just like, I'd rather be... He said it like, I'd rather be on drugs and then not try. But then I think he took it to too extreme. And I think there's like saying like, you know, at the end, it's just like, you can picture that Fletcher won basically. So in Fletcher's mind, he's like, oh, my abuse worked. Look at 𝘵𝘮. But, and I think if 𝘵𝘮 never found his self-worth and just relied on validation from Fletcher, you'd end up with that cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. It's about who you hang around with. You need a person to tell you like, okay, let's think about it. It's not going to work that way. But kind of give you constructive feedback, stuff that you can improve on. And I think if Fletcher went that way and said, because, all the abuse that he gave, it was nonsense.
Yeah. And he would just swear sometimes. It's like...
It's not even like you're... And I think even if he was given valid, constructive feedback, but it was just that... It's that... The bit where Neiman started saying, oh, my father did this. And he was just like, tell me you're upset. That scene, right? He was just like... You started heard it.
Uses it as ammo.
Yeah, your mum left you, your father's like doing this. And he used... But what is that going to do with someone? Like,
No, he's just trying to manipulate him to break him down.
And I think the best teachers I've had is just like, they said, okay, if you do this, it'll be better. But it's always something I can improve. And I think that's where I feel like it's like a toxic relationship. You'll always go back to it because that's all you know.
With music, I think with the music as well, because it's quite a tough industry. So I think for them, it's like a lot more like you get used to like people treating you badly because you're so desperate for like, for this class. In Neiman's case, he's so desperate for that. It's kind of like filmmaking as well because it's quite underfunded and there's not as much
opportunity,
not as many jobs or opportunities. You kind of have to be a bit more like, struggling or like go for lower roles or something just to get your foot in the door and have people treat you a bit maybe worse than other occupations just to get in there.
So I was watching a documentary about Peter Capaldi, the singer, and he was just saying that his single was it got to a point where it was just like people loved it. It was selling records, and he's like, the second single he had to make because there's that expectation of, you needed to have a number one. Like if your music didn't hit number one, that, and it's just like, and he said he struggled with imposter syndrome and that. But the thing he did was surround himself with people who were positive, gave him feedback, So it's like that. I think like it's all in good being the greatest, but if you don't have people around you to give you advice and guide you, and it's difficult. And I think that's what I see.
Even like that in the film because, as you say, it's quite like subtle actually because you don't really think about, you don't really notice that he doesn't have friends until like maybe like the second time you watch it, and you're like, wait, he's on his own apart from like his girlfriend.
But then you hear people whisper like, when he's in his normal band, you're just the drummer guy. You hear one of the people like saying that, Neiman's a bit ish,
Okay.
So you like,
and you also think, why isn't he talking to them as well? You're like, why doesn't he try and make a friend? Or when he's walking past like some people playing like the cello outside, or like who have cellos on the back, so he doesn't even say like hi or anything. So it's almost like he's isolating himself, which makes it worse. And
I noticed like, when the music sheet paper got lost, people were just like, stay away from me, don't touch the drum set, And I feel like there was a scene where you could see he had it. I don't know if he was in dorms, but it's his bedroom. He started taking his mattress out just so he could focus on the drums and stuff. And there was that obsession where he's like, his hands were bleeding. And he's just like, okay, that's all and good, but when you don't have something outside. And the date that he went on, it wasn't the pizza was good, it was because the music was good. And I was just like, bro, I could see her face be like,
he's obsessed.
Yeah, and I was just like, she was just like, oh yeah, the pizza's good, And just the fact that I was so like obsessed about asking her, oh, why did you choose that school? And she's like, just because you haven't got. It's like she was like, she didn't have a degree or major, whatever they call it in America.
Yeah.
And she could feel this.
And he's so the opposite of that. Yeah.
He was just like, and she was like, why did you choose Schaefer? And he was like, oh, because it's the best music school in America. And I was just like, you can tell he's
very driven,
but it's just like that metaphor. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, even when he has that talk with her, he's saying like, you will do this is gonna happen, like he's already thought it out, like,
oh yeah, when they had that
he's kind of seeing his life like in this like future where everything's gonna go to plan, he's gonna be great and everything, and it's dangerous.
And I think that's why there are people saying like, the people who do sports, like one injury could mess you up. And it's that thing like, that's why people say once your hobby becomes your job, it's difficult to enjoy it because now you're relying on that hobby to make money. And I think then that it was like I was I was listening to something and Ed Sheeran was just like, now music's become my not obsession, his job. He does art to get away from
No.
yeah, and I think Neiman would be at the point where he doesn't even enjoy music, and you could see that through it, because he's been obsessed to the point where, he has calyxes and, he gets angry quickly when he got into that car accident and Fletcher's like, you're not playing, get out. He lost it.
Jesus, yeah.
He's like, I
think
earned
it's
it.
like...
Because Fletcher built him up so much. He was like, I earned that because of that, like, toxicity here.
Yeah, and it's almost like he starts off really passionate, and you see all the posters on his wall and all the people he's idolized, and he starts with so much passion and, like, I don't know, love for the drums you sense, and then, like, as the film progresses, he slowly becomes more like Fletcher and becomes more obsessed with being great and perfect, and it's like, yeah, it descent into
Madness.
Becoming similar to him almost. Yeah.
And I think we're at this point where you can get validation anywhere. It's scary. You can post something on social media, and if it doesn't get certain likes, you think it's not good. But then your message hasn't reached to the right people, and it's kind of scary. And I think you've got to value yourself, and then let your work speak to it instead of being like, oh, it hasn't got that much likes. But which is hard because I think, when they're a family and somebody was just like, so how do you get judged in music competition? Music's subjective, and it's just like, that is tricky because art is subjective. It is hard. You might not like films that I watch, but I like them. So it's kind of like, how do you balance the worth of your thing?
But I think that's also an interesting one because when his like, I don't know, brother or cousin or something says it's subjective, it's like, it's interesting because, as I say, jazz is quite a fluid genre, but Fletcher wants it to be very objective and perfect. So when he answers that question, he says, no, actually it's not. It's like it's because the judges are judging them on how well and perfect they're doing and how accurate it is to the music. So even though, like, yes, like the style or taste of music is subjective, it's just interesting that Neiman like thinks it's subjective the same way that Fletcher does, but you have to be perfect.
It's crazy though, isn't it? I feel like this movie is a solid, like, 10 out of 10 watch, like,
I love the ending
because I think sometimes it's like in our modern criminal, it's like hustle culture. Everybody's got the same 24 hours in a day. So that adds pressure to everyone because it's just like, oh, you're sitting down on your butt. People are making millions. But it's that kind of comparison and validation, And I feel like, damn, it's all about who you hang around with.
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
and it's kind of like, it's like that quote, like, compare yourself with yourself. Because when you start looking at others and thinking, I'm not as good as them, or they're not giving me my validation, it can, like, eat away at you. But if you have self-worth and you know how much your work is worth, then you'll be okay.
So if we were Neiman, we would be like, bye-bye, Fletcher, we don't like you. No, but
after he made me cry, I would have run out of there. What the heck?
Soon as he was just like, say it louder, you're useless.
Oh,
I'd be like,
I could never do that.
I'd be like, bro, this is not worth the time, is it? But I think I don't think that Neiman had the self-respect. He didn't believe he was worth what he was worth. And I think that's what caught him into this violent trap of validation from his father, validation from his mentor.
Teacher.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's hard the people who care about you make it more difficult. And I think once you realise the people you think are there they have their opinions, but you should never let that dictate what you're going to do. And I think that's the hard bit. And I think enjoy it, take your time, because if you don't enjoy it, you're gonna end up chasing the greatest. But if you, for example, you're a painter, if you have a message, you like what you're doing, do it because you need to like it. At the end of the day, you're the one who's going to take the time and day to kind of do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Any final thoughts?
No, I think the film's great. I think the final scene as well, just it brings it all together so well, and it's such a good. I mean, like, you know, if we talk about the film itself, the tension in it is so well done, and it just brings all the different themes and moods together in such an explosive way. So yeah, I love the film.
I feel like what I like about it, whenever Neem, you know what? He says his name wrong, and now I'm always saying his name wrong because I swear it's not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he's not gonna say that, is he? And I feel like he's always alone outside. He's like music, and it became an obsession, not something you enjoy. And I think do whatever you can do to enjoy the hobby that you are pursuing.
Yeah, exactly. And don't let anyone bully you.
You know what?
Stand up for yourself, yeah.
But you say that though, but when you're so insecure about yourself, you're not going to fight for it. You see that it goes back to his father, like when they're in the cinema, somebody nudges him and he says sorry first. When it wasn't his, you know, like the cinema scene.
Yeah, and I think it's like, sorry, I just forgot what we were talking about. We were talking about,
you know, you need to have self-worth for you to stand up for it.
Yeah.
If you don't have self-worth, you're not going to say anything because you'll be stuck in that cycle. Because if you believe you're ish, you're not going to say, no, I'm the best. Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah,
and
no,
you were like saying that it's good to like stand up for the body, but if you're already in an ish position in the beginning, you're not going to be like, no, you're not going to talk to me like that because you're already in this. That's why he's chasing for validation. Yes.
And it's like you don't want to, like, it's tough because sometimes you have to like deal with a bit of bullshit to get like a job you like or be in a school you like. So it's about how far you're willing to compromise your own feelings and morals to get to a position, you know, where you feel like you're doing better, or even if someone's treated you badly, how much is it benefiting you? You kind of have to think like that.
Yep.
So it's quite tough. Because if you think like, oh, what if Neiman left that day when he was crying, what would have happened? And he might not have been as, you know, he might not have been to the level he was in the final, like, 10 minutes of that film. So it's a tough.
But the thing is, he needed that separation. Once he had that anger burst and he got
that's true.
He had that separation and then he found it. Cause you know that scene where he moved out. He had a job. I don't know what he was doing. Was he like coffee waitering? But he took himself out that. But then he met Fletcher in that jazz bar. Yeah. And then the toxic cycle goes back. He left it and it came back.
It's like seeing a toxic ex. Yeah.
And I feel like, that was that beautiful. I was just like, bruh. It was so, to me, that was perfect. Because he was actually happy. He called back his ex and it was just like, she was like, I got a boyfriend. I was just like, haha. He was just like, let me ask my boyfriend if he likes jazz. And then he was like, oh, I'm Ben.
That's such a brutal way to say it as well.
But the thing is, he needed to know that these things had consequences. And I was so happy that they did get back together because he was an ish to her. Like, basically, neglected her.
He was a dick.
And I was just like, you don't deserve that. But then the cycle of toxicity began and I was just like, it gave you a hope
To be honest,
that he was doing fine,
yeah,
and then he got roped back in it. And you just see
I feel like Neiman has issues that needs to be resolved. Yeah.
that goes back to how you see yourself.
Mm.
You just need friends who will tell you how it is, but respect you and not give you. It's like, say it how it is with constructive feedback. Because that's,
Yeah.
I always say,
Don't just insult the parents. Exactly.
I say that. So, for example, if you have something in your teeth, I would say you've got something in your teeth because that could be sorted less than a minute. There's no point pointing something out if it can't be sorted or is something out of their means. And I think constructive criticism is the best feedback because just me, there's programs I get rejected from and they don't give you feedback and you're like, well, okay, then what have I done wrong? Is it because you didn't like me or wasn't I not the right fit?
Yeah.
So that's why I always say like constructive feedback is the best. There's a lot to learn from Whiplash and I feel like you're just gonna tell us like what you think because some people just think the ending's just happy and I was like, that's not what I got from it. But
it's ambiguous. Yeah.
So that's all our thoughts today. So hopefully you've learnt life lessons through the screen. And that was Whiplash. Tell us what you like about Whiplash, what you know from Whiplash, and
what would you do in his situation?
Yeah.
Any other life lessons you had from the film?
Cry and never walk through the doors. Then 10 years later, have a big comeback and you'd be like, haha, Fletcher, like, bye. But yeah, that's our opinions. What do they do? Subscribe.
Thanks
For listening. Follow us on whatever this is going with. We're still new to this. Hope you enjoy. See you. Bye.